joined with the Miss Elliott. I gotta tell you, every time I'm with you, I always like walk away going, "This is gonna be fun." At the same time, you always push me, and so I'm ready for you to push me. Hopefully, not off the
Okay,
cliff, but
well, no. I'm going to push you closer to the edge, is all.
let's see where this goes here. I gotta ask this question: what is your religious background? I mean, it's one of those things where
Oh,
I
that's
know,
interesting.
I know
That's
that
an
you have
interesting
one.
answer. Yes, my mother was pregnant, incidentally, by her brother. Her
Wow.
mother wanted her to get married to somebody, so she advised her to go after Lloyd Jennison, whose father had some money. But the father was Baptist, the mother was Catholic. So I was raised in a home in which we did not talk about religion. Because if you talked about religion to my mother, you were talking about Catholicism.
Yeah.
And my dad didn't like Catholics. And if you talked about religion to my mother, you didn't talk about my other grandmother, because my father's mother hated Catholics, and my Catholic grandmother hated Protestants. So here we were.
How did your mom deal? Like, I thought I knew all about you. I did not know that about your story. How did your mom
Oh yeah.
deal with, you know, that? I can't imagine that.
Well, she just lied a lot.
Yeah.
My father, you couldn't lie to my father, and he would say to us, "If you're going to tell a lie, don't tell it to me." And he would never tell a lie. And my mother was the exact opposite. She said what she had to do to get by.
Yeah. Those were the times back then.
Yeah, and it wasn't until my my brother went to work with my uncle in a butter making situation in Wyoming, and was only there for a while, and came home and told my father something. And I think my brother told my father the truth.
Wow.
Yeah, and my brother was probably 28, 29 years old at that time. He had been in the Navy. He had gone through, he had taken a short course in dairy plant operation, and had a wife and a son, and was going to work with his uncle because his uncle was in the same field.
Yeah.
And he wasn't there for very long, and he came home, and then my uncle was never allowed on our property again.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is deep. I think I thought I know all about you, Miss Elliott, and that story there. I am going. How in the heck did I miss that one?
Well,
That.
you didn't miss it because I don't tell it, because it makes my brothers. I only have brothers left. All my sisters are dead,
Uh,
but it makes my brothers absolutely furious if I even say the word Uncle John, because
it
they
wouldn't.
don't want to know that, and they don't want to think that my mother would do that. And what they don't understand is my mother was raised in a Catholic household, I think 7 or 8 kids in a 2.5 bedroom house,
Wow.
and all those adolescent children with all that stuff going on, and their mother couldn't watch them, and their father didn't care to watch them. He was busy being funny. And so here these kids were kind of raised themselves, and they did pretty much whatever they wanted to,
Yeah.
because they were Catholics, so they couldn't do anything wrong.
Right.
Yeah. And
That's kind
my father was Baptist, so he couldn't do anything right as
of
far as the
right.
Catholics were concerned. Yeah, it was like, oh my God, we couldn't speak kindly of my father's mother in her presence, and we didn't dare speak unkindly of my mother's family in her presence. So it was like we learned what to say and what not to say, and when to say it. We learned when to smile, and when to laugh, and when to look sad, and when to cry. We learned how to live in that very strange environment.
Talk about religion backlash,
Oh, yeah,
whiplash.
absolutely.
That had to be. I just can't. I
Yep.
mean, I can't. And I thought my story was a little bizarre. I grew up Greek Orthodox because my dad was Greek
Oh,
Orthodox, and
oh,
my mom ends up converting and accepting Jesus, as we call it in the Christian faith, and became Baptist. And so it was one of those things where you were always stuck between a hard spot there because he's Greek Orthodox and here she is Southern Baptist at that point. Yeah, I mean, and so just imagine my household too, along with that one. I mean, it was always fun. So I got to ask this question: what was the young Miss Jane Elliott like growing up?
Oh, I was the middle child. I was the middle child.
I cannot imagine.
And my oh, I was the middle of seven. Yeah, on a
That's a big
farm,
family.
and we had no money. We were raised in abject poverty. We
Wow.
had no money, and we went to the school from from kindergarten to eighth grade. We went to a one-room school that was built on the northwest corner of my father's farm, because my grandfather gave that acre to the school district in order to have for a school, for a rural school. That's what they did. A farmer in the area had to give up an acre, and so my grandfather did. So we were raised on that. That's where we went to school for 9 years, kindergarten through eighth grade. It was like, here were these 5-year-old kindergartners in the same building with these 12 and 13-year-olds,
I
boys
cannot
and girls together, and one teacher trying to manage this whole mess. And we would have as many as 26 kids in that building all day, every day.
That's that poor teacher. He's got
Well, that's why they didn't last long. And on top of it, she had these Jennison kids who thought they knew everything. Absolutely, we were quite certain that we knew everything. And if we didn't know everything, when I was from third grade on, I read the encyclopedia, because those classes, all those other classes were in class. We were only in class once or twice a day, and
Yeah.
you didn't have anything else to do. So I sat and read the encyclopedia, because what else was there to do? I wasn't about to make trouble, because my dad said, if you get in trouble at school, you're going to get in more trouble at home. So we never got in trouble at school, but we watched other kids get in lots of trouble
Yeah.
because we had a different teacher every year.
Gosh, I can imagine. When did you know that you were going to be an activist? And I call you that. I hope I can call you that.
Well, I think when I was born, my father said, you can't judge a book by its cover or a man by his skin. Now, by God, you ought to remember that. And so, okay, if that's the way it is, Dad. And then he would say, I don't want any pickaninnies in my house as grandchildren. And then my daughter brought home, my daughter and her husband brought home their little child, and her husband was Saudi Arabian.
Whoa.
And we put that child, that grandchild, in my father's arms. He's sitting there in his bib overalls and his cap on at my house. And he looked at that kid and he said, it's the most beautiful child I've ever seen. And then he looked up at those two young people standing there so delighted with themselves. And he said, that's a good cross.
Uh,
He's a farmer and he knew a good cross when he saw it. And that was a good cross. He was perfectly happy with this child who obviously came from North Africa.
yeah. Yeah.
No doubt about it. And
Yeah.
yet, this is the most beautiful child he'd ever seen. And she was, and she is.
Um, have you always been vocal when it came to race? Is that if I'm hearing your background correct, it seems like that's always been in you to stand up for the marginalized.
Yeah, I always stood up for the other, because I was the other in my
Yeah.
family.
Yeah.
And I knew how it felt to be the other. I knew how it felt to be the one that was different, never going to amount to anything. I'm still haven't, obviously, according to them. And that's okay. That's okay too. That's okay too. That's, you can't allow yourself to be harnessed to something that you can't believe in. And I can't believe in some of the stuff that my parents believed. There's no way I can believe that you can't marry out of your race. And I honestly believe you can't marry out of your race unless you marry somebody from another planet, because we're all the same race. So it's not possible for you to marry out of your race. But they got so upset over anybody who would marry out of their race. And I think, wait, where did this person come from? Was it Saturn? We know there's no life on Saturn. Maybe Mars. The whole thing is so ridiculous that I learned at an early age that my father was brilliant, never went to college, but he knew more by living than I will ever learn.
Hmm.
No matter how many degrees I have, I will never learn. I will never know as much as my father did. My father said to us one day when we were all in and out of college. We were visiting in the house, and he said, "Decide what you're going to do. Either look, work for $1, or work to make $1, or work to make a difference. Decide what you're going to
Wow.
do, and then do it, by God."
Wow.
So
Make a dollar make a difference.
either make $1 or make a difference. So my brothers became civil engineers, and one was a dairy plant operator. They made $1. My sisters and I all became teachers. We made a difference, and we still are. Teachers make a difference for as long as they educate. Not every teacher makes a difference. Some of them make a very negative difference. But I'm not a teacher, I'm an educator. And the word educator comes from the duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. And if you
Wow.
aren't doing that as an educator, don't call yourself an educator, call yourself a teacher.
Leading people out of ignorance.
Right.
Wow. That's powerful. That's powerful. That is, as we say in the Black church, that gets you an amen. I mean, that
okay, is, no, as we say in my church, that gets you an A women.
Or a woman. There you go.
Because you have to remember that when the word male for men came up, they had to find a word for women. So they added the chemical symbol for iron to the word for male to get the word female.
You are always teaching me, and I don't know what that's all about. Oh my God.
Well, hey, the chemical symbol for iron is Fe. You add that to the word male, and you get something that can produce babies.
You're always teaching me.
Hey, women.
What? Why do you think? I'm gonna get together here because you always get me. It's what you always do. That's how we're together. You always like get me off base here. Let me get back on base here, Miss Elliott.
Okay, get back on base. All right.
Why do you think you resonate with people so well? I mean, because you do. I mean, it's when I tell my friends I want to be with you, they all were like, their face lit up. They were like, "Get out of here." I mean, it's kind of one of
That's what they say. That's what they say to me too, and they mean it. They mean, get out of here.
Get out of here.
We're tired of trying to keep you alive. Those suckers are out in the hall, want you dead. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Get back in your room as fast as you can. Yeah. I don't resonate with all young Black people because I say you aren't Black, and I'm not white. Those are two words that came up during the Spanish Inquisition when Torquemada had to find a way to decide whether or not to kill someone, and he couldn't tell what their religion was by looking at them. He was into killing anybody who wasn't Christian. He had killed a bunch of Christians before somebody said to him, "Those people you killed were Christians." And then he had to come up with a way to decide who deserved to die. And he came up with skin color. And he called light people white because white is the color of goodness and purity. He called darker skinned people Black because Black is the color of savagery and evil. So it makes it all right for us good, pure people to kill those savage and evil people. He set us on this path in the 1400s. And the word race, meaning a specific group of people, came out of France in 1580. Did you know that?
I did know that because we talked about this before. And so I did know that.
If you send a third grader to the dictionary, when you start to study the dictionary, you send the third grader to the dictionary. And when that little boy came into the room, the teacher said, "Oh, another little Black boy. Oh, here's a white girl." When she said those two things, all those kids heard that. And then you send them to the dictionary and they read the dictionary, the definition for white and its goodness and purity, and for Black is savagery and evil. You have set those kids up to fail.
Yeah.
You have set them up to fail the most important lesson they will ever learn, which is skin color does not determine your worth, should not determine your wealth, should not determine your acceptance, should not determine your lovableness. Skin color is something the result of your body's adaptation to the natural environment over hundreds of thousands of years. It is not God-given. It is the result of your bodies and your ancestors' bodies' reaction to the rays of the sun. Get over it.
Yeah, I can't say. I want to say a woman for our time together, but
Good
yes,
for you. Thank you. That's good.
there you go. Um, when it comes to race, where are we at in this country?
We're in worse shape than we were in when Barack Obama became president. Because when he became president, a whole bunch of angry melanemic people went underground and plotted as to what they were going to do if he succeeded. And what they were going to do was see to it that he did not succeed. And that's exactly what Mitch McConnell said. He will never succeed. And then when he ran again, yeah, he said before he got elected the first time, he said he'll never get elected. And he did. And then he wouldn't succeed because Mitch McConnell wouldn't let him. Then he said he'll never get reelected. He got reelected. So then he said he'll never be successful. He was slightly successful. He got us the medical act, the medical care that we would never have had he not been president. But those people who were convinced racists were so angry that they would be so ignorant as to allow their ignorance to dictate what they would have for a president for 4 years. And what we had for a president for the 4 years following Barack Obama was a racist, sexist, ageist, homophobic, ethnocentric fool.
You stand by that. You stand by those words.
He was all those things and less because he was so ignorant and still is.
And every time I come to the table with good questions, thinking I am not going to lose it here. I'm not going to lose it. Every time you do this to me, I'm not going to lose it. I'm not going to lose it. And you get me every time.
You see, if you laugh because this whole thing is so ridiculous. Yeah. I remember when Richard Nixon said, "I'm saving the White House for you white people." On a speech, he said that to the reporters, to a bunch of reporters. And I thought, oh my God, we have to put a stop to this. We have to change the name of the White House. We should change the name of the White House to the President's Residence.
Yeah.
It has a lovely ring to it. It describes what it is. There are lots of White Houses in Washington, D.C. I've seen lots of them. I've been there several times. But there's only one President's Residence.
Yeah, it is a people's house. Well, they call it that anyway.
Hey, if you don't think of people of color, other than animals, then it's saying, once again, it's the White House.
You are okay.
Make no mistake about this. If you really think that people who say we're going to call it the People's House, you think they're going to let you in?
Wow.
Not if Donosaurus T. Rump gets reelected. You won't be allowed to go in except as an employee.
Can I ask you this question? January 6th, how did you see that day?
I saw a bunch of people who didn't know any better than to think it was right to storm the Capitol of the United States of America. I saw a whole bunch of people who had, even though many of those who were in the group who were rioting and leading the riot had been in the military, they hadn't learned what they should have learned in the military. You go to the military to, you take the oath to protect your country. And then they came back and used their military training and their military skills to try to overthrow the government of the United States. That's the way I saw that. I saw that as an attempt to overthrow the government of the United States. And Mr. Pence refusing to go along, that's the one great thing he did, and it's the last good thing he did. Once in a lifetime.
Wow.
Not enough, but it's better than none.
Wow. Are you less hopeful today when you look at race in America, or are you hopeful?
Oh, I'm extremely hopeful. I really am, because, and I'll tell you why. We've got a brilliant Black woman on the Supreme Court. Just recently.
She really is. I mean,
I watched it when those guys had to question her, and those tall melanemic males stood up and asked her the most ridiculous questions I've ever heard in my life. If they had been asking me those questions, I would have said, "Sonny, sit down and shut up." But she didn't. She took a drink and then she answered their questions without any notes. Every question that they asked her, she
It was
looked at them,
painful at times,
she
though.
took a little drink, and what?
It
Oh,
was
yeah,
painful.
it was
It was
painful.
painful at times to watch.
It
Yeah,
was painful to watch, but it wasn't painful because she was reacting negatively.
definitely
It
not.
was painful because those men were making such fools
Yeah.
of themselves, and they are the ones who are willing to say they are prepared to write laws for this nation.
Mm.
When you read the book The Color of Law, have you read it?
I've not read that one yet. No.
Oh my God, get the book The Color of Law, and you realize why we're in this mess and what we have to do to get out of it.
Mm.
It's
Recommend
just
that one.
fabulous. I think pages 206, 215 and 217. Just go to the bookstore, take that book off the shelf, and read pages 250 and 216. And it will blow you away because you think this is all supposed to be this way. But no, all this has been legalized by people who don't know how to write laws for a country that appreciates every citizen.
Mm. But you're hopeful, though, in where we're going.
Yeah, I am. But we've got an awful. We've got to get over the 4 years ago. What 6 years ago when we elected a fool? 4 years of that took us back about 35 years.
35 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, there's no doubt but what we are right back where we were in the 70s. And we were coming out of that in the 60s and 70s. But 5 years, 4 years of that man and his followers and people who would agree to follow him and people who had never listened to Marshall McLuhan, a Canadian, who said, keep your kids away from television, it will ruin their minds. Most of those people who were in that crowd that were charging the White House had spent a whole lot of years, probably 25 or 30 years, watching television. And you can't watch television and learn what you need to know. And if you think you can, spend 3 hours a day just with your nose glued to that idiot box. And then you'll realize Marshall McLuhan was right. And if you haven't read any of Marshall McLuhan's books, get a Marshall McLuhan book. You'll learn so much that you think, oh my God, where have I been for the last 25 years?
Next to last question. I cannot believe that we're here. And these are good. So I cannot wait to see how you're going to answer these here. What advice do you give to educators and leaders when it comes to the next generation?
These kids they have to start teaching them to vote at the third grade level, the second grade level, the first grade level. When Barack Obama was running for president, my daughter was talking to somebody who ran a early childhood ed group. And that teacher came to my sister Mary, and said, we had an election this week. And Mary said, yeah, sure, you're with your little kids, you had an election. She said, yes. She said, and you need to know that they voted to elect Barack Obama. And she said, why do I need to know that? She said, because what your sister did with her blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise has filtered down to these little kids who aren't even in school yet. The things that she said are the reasons, some of those are the reasons for those kids voting for Barack Obama. She changed the way their parents felt about Black people.
Wow.
Now, I don't know that that's true, but I'm going to accept it. And I'm going to say, if I change, and I have proof with the kids that I've talked to since they left third grade.
I think you have changed a lot of people, by the way.
No. I don't think I have. When you're a little kid, I can change you. But after that, you have to decide to make the change yourself. Little kids are encouraged by their parents to make the change. But then when they vote and they're all white, this is an all white community, they voted for Barack Obama. They voted for Barack Obama because somebody taught them that it was all right to have a person of color leading this nation. And it must be all right because we all have DNA from Africa in our DNA.
Right. We all do.
Yeah.
Say that enough. This is a good one. I think this is a good one. I wrote it, so I hope it's a good one.
That's fine, I'm sure.
That's a good one.
Whatever.
Back
You
here.
you couldn't write a bad question if you tried to. Go ahead. It's
Right
not
here.
the question that's bad, it's the answer that's bad. And I'm responsible for that. Go for it.
Right. What advice do you give to people who have endured racial trauma?
The first thing you have to do to people who have been on the receiving end of racism is realize that the people who are doing those things are the ones who are ignorant.
Mm,
Because what they don't realize is if you trace your DNA back as far as you can, you'll find out that every one of us, our DNA, some of our DNA came from a country in Africa.
yeah.
You and I are 30th to 50th cousins. Whether you want me for your cousin or not, you don't have a choice. You are one of my 30th. I am one of your 30th to 50th cousins. We have to tell the truth about where we all came from, and we have to refuse to accept racist statements being made in our presence. We have to fight against racist commercials, and we don't have to do that as much anymore because now you are actually seeing Black people, not what we call Black and are melanaceous and melanotic people on commercials. Commercials take up most of the kids' viewing time.
It does.
Most of the time you're spent watching television or you're watching commercials.
It's
And
amazing how kids love them, though. I think.
right, yeah,
My
hey,
daughter
but
loves them.
but
Yeah.
now they love them. They love them, and it isn't because there are people of different colors in them, but because now they are seeing people of different colors as people of different colors.
Mm,
It's a whole big thing when you see a father who is melanaceous or melanotic giving advice to a child who doesn't look like you, but is your age. And
yeah.
here this brilliant man is advising this child what to do, what to wear, what to buy, how to get the insurance on your car, what to drink, quite frankly, what to eat. It's
Wow.
absolutely television. Some of these kids watch television more, well, most of them now watch television more than they read. And that's why you have to start having election when kids are in third grade. So that by the time they get to be 18 or whatever the age is for voting now, they know how to vote
They,
because they've done it. They've learned how valuable it is from third grade on.
they feel comfortable.
What was your
I got,
question?
I got this last one. I promise my last one. I'll tell you. Are you surprised with where you're at today?
You and I are 30th to 50th cousins.
Wow.
Let's get that established and do it now. The first people who occupied this land looked like Oprah Winfrey. Make no mistake about that.
Yeah.
Columbus was not the first discoverer of this land. The discoverers of the first discoverers of this land came to this land between 20,000 and 10,000 years before Columbus got here. Have you seen this map?
Yes. And it's a brilliant map. I love it.
It's a brilliant map because it shows you where we all came
Yeah.
from and how, in two ways, where we all got to. And we all got there because of the courage, the commitment, the determination, and the brilliance of people from Africa. They didn't look like me. They looked like Oprah. They looked like you. They didn't look like the Kennedys.
Yeah.
They looked like people who had brilliance before we decided to look into measuring brilliance. And now there's a book out there, Nile Valley Contributions to Civilization, that every child should be exposed to from kindergarten on.
It's a great book, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And
It's
what
great.
you learn is those melanaceous and melanotic people knew what they were doing, knew what they were talking about before the rest of us were here.
It's a great book. It really is. That's one of my favorites as well. Miss Elliott, this is always good. I could do it every week with you, in all honesty. I told my wife we're going to be together, and she said, this should be fun. I said, I think it will.
Well, it was this what I did was hard for my father and mother because they lost their reputation in in Riceville, Iowa. Nobody would have anything to do with them. However, the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation came to my classroom and made a film the second year that we did the exercise. They sent me a copy of that film, and I took that film up to my parents who lived in the hotel that my husband and I owned. and showed just my mother and my dad that film. When it was over, my father stood up in his blue bib overalls, took his red handkerchief out of the back pocket of his overalls, blew his nose, wiped his eyes, and said, "I wish somebody had taught me that when I was 9 years old."
Wow. Your
Now,
father deeply
yeah.
just impacted you, it seems
Oh,
like.
absolutely. Everything
Yeah.
that I do, everything that I say, everything that I think, everything that I am came as a result of having a father who said, "A man's judged by the company he keeps, and the best of companies none too good." It was right. We know the difference between right and wrong. Racism is wrong.
Yes.
Accepting all people as your cousins is right.
Yeah.
If we could teach kindergarten to 8th graders to 12th graders, you know the difference between right and wrong. Now do the right thing.
Do the right thing. And it's just, I mean, I am with you on this one. I'm probably more hopeful. But man, we still got a long way to go.
No. I'm not hopeful. I hope. Hope is an acronym for holding on to positive energy.
Mm,
Okay, you can hold on to positive energy, but holding on to that energy won't do you any good unless you use that energy to make a difference, a positive difference. You can hope until hell freezes over. It won't do you any good. But if you get busy and get out there and say, "We're not going to have any more of that nonsense in this school," you are going to do that to these kids in this school. All of you teachers, and this is the best education I ever got, are going to teach these kids using Orton, Slingerland phonics so that every child will leave their classroom reading at the proper level.
wow.
Yeah, there's something called Orton, Slingerland phonics. And you have to remember that at least 20% of every group you're going to have is going to be composed of dyslexic people. 4 out of 5 dyslexics are boys, not 4 out of 5. I didn't say 4 out of 5 boys are dyslexic. I said 4 out of 5 people who are dyslexic. 4 out of those 5 are boys.
Yeah.
So you're going to have, in a classroom with 25 kids, you're going to have 5 kids at least who are dyslexic and who have to be taught to read by using Orton Gillingham phonics. And the kids who are in the film, The Eye of the Storm, which everybody has seen, don't realize, the people who see that don't realize that all of those children came into my room reading at the 1st grade level. One of them, this was her 5th year in schools. The principal called my kids the dummy group that year.
Wow.
And the next year, yeah, it was ugly. And so those kids came into my classroom scared to death because they had heard what a witch I was. They didn't use witch, they used the other word, which for me stands for being in total control, honey. But anyway, they were sure that
in total control. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I don't,
you want to tell that to your wife so that the next time somebody calls her the B word, she can say, "Oh, thank you very much. You're out of control, aren't you, darling?" And then she can reach in her pocket and take out her little Lorena Bobbitt fruit knife.
Oh my gosh. I am done with you.
Anyway, all those kids came in reading at the 1st grade level. 9 months later, because of Orton Slingerland phonics, they were reading at the 4th grade level, and some of them, their independent reading level was 6th grade.
Wow, that
because
fast.
I taught them that fast, because they came in at such a low level. I could get them up to where they belong in 9 months. It was absolutely, I knew I could do it because I took a course in Orton Slingerland phonics, and anybody who takes a course in Orton Slingerland phonics ought to be paid more than the teachers who haven't had it, because they're going to know how to deal with the kids who can't read. And the reason they can't read is because they don't see words the way they're written, and they don't hear words the way they're spelled.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
That's true. Thank you, Miss Elliott. We got to do this again sometime.
Okay. I'm sure you've heard it all before. I'm sure I said the same thing the last time, I'm sure.
It's always good. No, it's always good. I just got to make that clear. It is always good. And I cannot thank you enough for your time. You're always kind and responding back to me. And so I just deeply appreciate it. So the next time, please respond back. I hope you have a great afternoon, a great weekend. This was good.
Well, I'm going to have a good one. I'm going to get this haircut. Things are going to get better as quick as I get this haircut. I feel like a monster. Anyway, all right. Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Have a good one. I will talk to you soon, I hope, ma'am.
All right. We'll see you again.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.